While you've probably been told to stick it to the man, be your own boss, forge your own path, has anyone really stopped to tell you why the traditional career path still exists and why it's still actually quite effective? Keeping everything simple, let's talk about the complex nature of what the corporate ladder means and what that means for Gen Z and the rest of our careers. Let's dive right in. Welcome to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. If you're new here, my name is Michael Klukas. I'm your fellow student and host of this show. And in this show, we boil down complicated topics into simple, actionable tips. And we're starting off with the general setup here, which is the context. So for the context here, we got to break down what the corporate ladder and entrepreneurship, which is a word that I cannot spell for the life of me, what that really means for Gen Z and how we perceive it in our overall goals and outline for what we want in work and careers. So the first thing here is that the corporate ladder or the corporate path is more seen as the traditional path. So it is one that it's tried, it's true, and it's been tested multiple times by multiple different people in multiple different industries. That's why it's traditional. It's been put through the ringer multiple times. Now, ultimately, it is a very secure and predictable path. And that's not a bad thing by any stretch. So when I bring up the differences that Gen Z has with it, it is trying to figure out what are we prioritizing for. So that's the context for the corporate ladder, meaning the traditional career path. But then the modern twist is the American dream, quote unquote, or making it, which the best example I have of that is for the FIRE movement, which is financially independent, retire early. So this group that is dedicated towards fast tracking their financial success to the point where they're able to retire early, which is a fantastic goal to have, in my opinion. So they want to be able to take control of their time, take control of the path they go on moving forward. And because I live here in the United States of America, being able to say that freedom of choice is ultimately what we want. We want the freedom to choose, we want the freedom to have options. We want the freedom to be able to actively go down a direction and a path that makes the most sense to us. And so that is where the shift has occurred, because that fundamental underlying value has not changed, but how we interact with it has changed. And what I mean by that is kind of this idea of like extreme adolescence as well. So considering all the major milestones that people will go through or people had gone through throughout most of their lives, if I was to chunk some of them up for like through high school, it is going to like your senior prom, it is graduating, looking for colleges to apply to, getting into your university, moving out, and once you've moved out, going through university, getting internships, getting a job, or getting your first job afterwards. And it's just like this sequence of events that has occurred in the past, but anymore doesn't take the same route or the same route for us. And so extreme adolescence is this thing that has, I believe, impacted our relationship to those milestones, because rather than us hitting them in the same time frame for Gen Z or millennials even, it has been stretched out where it is completing college in 5 to 6 years. It is then getting jobs that may not actually meet the requirements that we, or the qualifications that we do have. And then from there, trying to get the best footing possible into a career that we actually enjoy and actually want to be in. And so that's where I think the modern twist is coming in, simply because we are trying to make the most of the situation while also not allowing ourselves to fall victim to any preconceived notions of what it really means to make it. And real quick here, if you're watching this on YouTube and you are enjoying this so far, don't forget to leave us a like and subscribe to the podcast down below. That helps me out so much. If you're listening to us on a podcast app of choice, make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and give us a follow so you know whenever a new episode will hit your feed. All right, let's dive right back in. So Gen Z has ultimately been told not to really trust the institutions and the corporations that exist as they presently are. And the most reliable person that we have is ourselves. So in the book Gen Z at Work, it is stated that Gen Z is kind of the DIY generation. Do it ourselves, we'll figure it out ourselves. We have access to, if you can't see it holding up my phone here, we have access to literally all the knowledge in the world in the palm of our hand. And that means for us having a lot more confidence that we will be able to figure something out and make something work. But that also then comes back where, because we've been told not to trust larger institutions, we've seen that play out over time. Growing up during the great financial crisis, we've seen our parents and loved ones lose jobs. Even at the start of this year, 2024, there's been just massive layoffs. There's massive layoffs at the end of last year. And we just see this instability where we used to hear about stories of companies really taking care of their employees, where retirement wasn't something you really had to stress about, or having really good benefit packages that would account for everything that you were going to need going forward. And it's just like seeing that transition, seeing what's changed, then we become a lot more skeptical of what it's actually going to do for us and how we're going to be able to lead a life that's fulfilling while creating value for a company that doesn't value us. And that's where I believe that transition has taken its almost final form right now. That sounds a lot like a Dragon Ball Z thing where I'm just thinking like a little corporation dressed up like a little Frieza. Put a little Frieza in a suit. Just my final form. That's really dumb. Okay, moving on. But because of this, we've been told to be really realistic. And because we're trying to be so realistic, then we're choosing to invest in ourselves. So Alex Hormozy calls it the SME 500. So rather than investing money in the stock market, into the corporations, into large institutions, we're investing it in ourselves, in our own knowledge, in our own marketability, being able to say, all right, I know the skill set. I know the skill set well. I can monetize this. Now let me go forward and try to make something out of this. And I think that is a good path to go, but I also think that it poses an issue because the corporate ladder is not a bad thing. Institutions and current blue chip companies, as I would call them, the ones that have been around for a long time, aren't a bad thing necessarily. And let's get into that real quick. But also, comment down below if you fall more into the traditional career path category or if you're striking it out on your own instead. Let me know if you watch this on YouTube. Now, the simple questions here, this is the second segment of the show that we're diving into, and it has been like the stage is set for like these three questions to be front and center about the traditional and non-traditional career ladders. So let's start with the first one. And is that, are corporate ladders and the process to get up them and to climb them really that bad? There are pros and cons. And that's, come close for a second if watching YouTube. That is the truth of the matter in so many circumstances. There's pros and cons to everything. Now, ultimately, some of like the ones that come off the top of my head is the fact that for a corporate ladder, for a traditional path, there's good benefits. There are retirement vehicles that are in place already, and there is more often than not still stability in place. Now, of course, we have to acknowledge the fact that with the amount of layoffs, with companies going under, with what the pandemic showed us about some companies, just instability that exists inherently, we acknowledge the fact that it's not perfect. It can't be perfect, but there are still pros. But then, of course, there's the other side of the coin here, and there can be things like a toxic work environment that kind of bleeds out any sense of enjoyment from the job. There's lower pay increases because if you're staying with one company over the long haul, then you are statistically less likely to make more because you have more negotiating power jumping to another company every 2 to 3 years. And then also there's limited upside in terms of sometimes there is truly a skill ceiling that you will reach or just a title ceiling that you will reach where you can't really climb much further without, again, changing jobs or changing companies. And so you have to weigh the pros and cons of them. And I don't think it is inherently bad to want to go the traditional path, because with the traditional path, some people do want and strive for that security and that sense of, I know what's happening, I know what's coming, I've seen the path laid out for me by either my boss, by either my recruiter. I can see what I need to do to get from this entry level position to the associate position to the middle management position to the senior management position. Some people like that path because it is predictable, and that's a good thing. And of course, there is still that risk of things like layoffs, the business going under. I mean, we've all heard of the Enron crisis, where there was just so much accounting fraud going on that just hosted or hid a host of problems. And we acknowledge the fact that that exists, but there still is more security and stability in these established larger companies as a whole. And the thing is, the reality of it is, even if we're running our own small business, then we still are prone to that same risk. It just takes a different form. And so that leads us into the second question, which is running your own business really the best way to go? And again, the answer becomes yes and no. There's pros and there's cons, which is probably the most unsatisfying answer that you can look for, because you're probably hoping for like some like flag planted in the ground, but the answer is almost always in the middle. And so there are trade-offs being made. There is less security, there's less stability, but there's more autonomy. There's more ability to say, this is what I'm focusing on, and this is how I'm going to get this done, and how I'm going to make it happen. The upside about what you can do becomes unlimited, because the only limit is how smart you are about the work that you're doing and the market that you've chosen to be in. But then direction becomes harder to find, because sometimes you don't know where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do, and that just leads you in this kind of gray zone of, I don't know which route would be best, I don't know how to best operate this company. And so that's a trade-off that's being made. And then of course there is the well-known stat that most small businesses fail within the first couple years. About 90% of them do. And that is, as I said, similar to layoffs that will occur or business going under, because that's not something that's always within our control, but often finding or facing some type of failure is a learning experience, as long as you view it as that and not a end all be all that says you can't do this, but rather okay, this didn't work for XYZ reasons. Now I have to go forward and try again, knowing what I know now. So how does Gen Z kind of combine these two ideas together? And ultimately it comes in the form of side hustles and intrapreneurship. Side hustles kind of speak for themselves. You've probably seen them a lot on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. They're everywhere. Someone's promising you that you do this small little job or this small little online task, you're going to be making thousands of dollars overnight, which, by the way, that's a scam. But then we have intrapreneurship, which is someone who doesn't want to actively strike it out on their own, but instead takes the skill sets that they would learn in entrepreneurship and applies it within their role and within their company. This can be someone that is doing like research and development and is pushing forward a new program, who is crafting new deals for the company to go out and secure, and they are really focusing on the skill sets they would learn as an entrepreneur, but it's just simply within the already constructed system of an established company. Because then we also have the fact that Gen Z is the most likely generation to have a side hustle than any of our previous generations, or the fact that we will more likely have 2 to 3 jobs, because we are trying to secure a more stable financial position. And this is, again, as I mentioned, the FIRE movement, financially independent, retire early, trying to make the most money possible in the shortest amount of time possible. And because we're trying to fast track our progress, it's because we're looking for and trying to create a new opportunity that allows us to go through our career feeling like we are in charge, feeling like we're the one that actually is in the driver's seat, and not letting someone else tell us what we have to do and how we're going to get there. Because ultimately, We've seen people and we've seen what happens when someone else is in charge of what your career looks like, what your life looks like. And we want to not repeat the same mistakes and instead want to say, okay, if that's how the game is played, I want to play it on my own terms. Now, ultimately, there is no right or wrong way to really go about your career. There's only ideal and less ideal. And so that leads us to these 3 simplified actions and the final segment of the show here, where we're going over what are 3 things that I've personally done or things that I would recommend that you really kind of grapple with to get yourself more on track towards a life that is fulfilling and meaningful for you. And so the first thing is you have to make progress towards a lifestyle over a long period of time. This isn't you making progress towards a title. It's not making progress towards a salary range or getting the company car, whatever it is. It's instead making progress towards a certain type of life that you want to lead in the future. Why this is important, though, is working backwards to get what you want will help guide the decisions that you're going to make today. If you know that you want to live in the big city, you want to have your own car, you want to be able to work from 9 to 5, or you want to be able to work Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the office, but then Tuesday, Thursday at home, whatever it is, you have to be able to plan that lifestyle out and choose decisions and make decisions today that will get you closer and closer to that end goal. And it is over the long haul, especially because if you are getting very clear today about what you want for the future, then that is going to help you find the direction that's going to get you there the easiest or going to get you there with the most amount of certainty, because then you can ask other people who've maybe done something similar, people who are maybe living a part of the lifestyle that you want, and asking them what they did to get to that point, as well as if or when you need to start making switches to your current trajectory to make that more of a reality and make that likelihood more of a possibility. And then the other simplified action is that you have to let yourself experiment and to find your actual ideals. Now, what I mean by this is it's important to ultimately test what we want to do and what we want to have happen. And sometimes we never actually know until we try it out. We may think that, oh, this job actually looks like it'd be great for me, but then we're really just being swayed by the salary and the benefits rather than the job itself. And of course, it's okay to pursue something for financial reasons and financial gain, and then use that financial incentive to supplement and fuel your passion in life outside of work. That's okay. It just can't be such a big trade-off where it's soul draining and soul crushing that you don't have the energy to actually live your life outside of work. But it's the same for career or business planning. We need some exposure to different ideals and different experiences to get a better understanding of what really matters to us and what we really want to have as our kind of hook to hang our hat on of like, all right, this is what I want to do and this is why I want to do it. And don't feel like you have to get the right idea right away. Let yourself experiment, let yourself be uncertain and start messy at points. Really just kind of dive in and understand that you are trying to learn. And there's a couple phases that you can go through. And Sean Purdy from the My First Million podcast really goes over these seasons of life as the learning phase, the earning phase, and the growing phase. So you're either learning the tools of the trade, you're getting your experience in, you're earning where you're trying to make as much money as possible, and growing where you are trying to grow the organization, grow your experience, whatever it is, by leaps and bounds. And each one's a different season, and you have to be able to go through them just at different points throughout your journey and throughout your career progression. And the other piece of the puzzle here is you have to understand that a plan B is not, I repeat, it is not a bad thing. Now, you'll hear sometimes that if you have a plan B, that means your plan A wasn't good enough or that you didn't trust your plan A, and that is stupid. I'm gonna put my foot down there. That is a stupid methodology to have. And the reason I say that is because nothing is going to be perfect. When you make a plan, The only thing that you can expect is that something will go wrong. It's just a matter of when. And having some type of safety net is the very thing that will allow you to actually experiment and find the ideals that you want. And so having a plan B isn't some evil thing. It isn't going to stunt your progress. It's practical. And in trying to find the career and the style of career that means the most to you, so either traditional or non-traditional, you should have a safety net in place. This is why so often you'll hear in terms of like finances to have a 3 to 6 month emergency fund in case something goes wrong. Then you're able to have something to fall back on that gives you breathing room to take the leap and take the chance. More often than not, you'll hear people that have their various side hustles, and when they're going through them, they are trying to balance both that traditional job and their new side hustle, which eventually becomes their main hustle or their main source of income, and they realize, oh, I don't need to balance these. I no longer need this safety net, and they can leave the job and create a new one within their current business. And it's all just a matter of providing yourself leeway and giving yourself room to maneuver around different obstacles and options in the end that you can fall back on if for whatever reason just things go horribly wrong and life throws you a curveball. Because again, the only thing that we can be certain about is that nothing is certain and something will change. And that's why in the end, the corporate ladder is still a viable and very valuable option for people. Of course, run your own business can be equally well done and very fulfilling, but it's not for everyone. Not everyone should be trying to strike it out as an entrepreneur or as a solopreneur. And Gen Z simply has a greater focus on how we can make the most money possible and as quickly as possible to provide for us a lifestyle and sense of security that we feel is slowly slipping away for a lot of people and for a lot of us. And this isn't something to feel stifled or overly concerned about, because that is just a natural progression towards how are we going to kind of self-correct for what we've seen go wrong in the past and what we want to see go right in the future. And that is trying to strike that balance between the people that want to go the corporate and traditional routes and people that want to go the entrepreneurship and the build it yourself and DIY routes. And it all comes down to what goals you have in the end for yourself and for the life that you want to lead and how you're going to get there. So think on what means the most to you, why you want to get there overall, and what you can do today to start experimenting and testing your theories out and proving them wrong, because you don't want to fully commit yourself to a path that you have no clue if it is going to truly be what you want for the rest of your life. But with that, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast if you watch this on YouTube. That does help me out so much. Make sure that you do comment down below our earlier question of the day, which is, are you more the traditional path or are you the DIY strike it on your own career path right now? If you're watching us or listening to us on a podcast app of choice, make sure that you leave us a 5-star rating. It does help me out so much and helps promote the show to other people just like you. With that, have an amazing day, you amazing people, keeping everything simple. I will see you all in the next episode. Go out there and do great things.